Welcome in, everyone, to Life Without Limits, where there is no limit to what you can achieve, literally. I have the most wonderful, special guest on my show today. Oh, my gosh. So I'm going to breathe and introduce my guest. Dr. David Feinstein is a clinical psychologist and pioneer in developing innovative therapeutic approaches, leading to 9 national awards for his books on consciousness and healing. He and his wife, Donna Eden, have built the world's largest and most vibrant organization teaching energy medicine. Their latest award-winning book, The Energies of Love, achieved bestseller status on the New York Times relationship list. David has served on the faculties of Johns Hopkins University, School of Medicine, Antioch College, and the California School of Professional Psychology. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to miss a beat on this, so thank you while you're allowing me to read some of just a small bite of everything that Dr. Feinstein has done. David received the 2002 Outstanding Contribution Award from the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, and again in 2012. The U.S. Book News Award for the Best Psychological Mental Health Book of 2007, and Outstanding Leadership Award from the Canadian Association for the Integrative and Energy Therapies. And the Infinity Foundation in 2013, the Spirit Award with Donna for their contribution to the evolution of consciousness and its impact on society. A licensed psychologist in Oregon, he has contributed more than 100 articles to professional journals. Now, I'm just going to read a few of his books. And might I add, ladies and gentlemen, ta-da, this is my textbook. All right, some of David's books. Personal Mythology, The Energies of Love, Energy Psychology Interactive, with many with Donna, most with Donna Eden, his wife, in a collaboration. David Feinstein is the pioneer of pioneers. With his work, I was able to earn my diplomat status in energy psychology. So without further ado, thank you all for listening. Thank you, David Feinstein, for being on my podcast today. Welcome in.
Thank you, Joan. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're so kind. I'm so excited. For anyone out there who does not know what energy psychology is, how do you define energy psychology?
Well, energy psychology brings together everything we know clinically about how to work to help people overcome problems, to help people reach their goals, their higher self, and it combines that understanding, which, since Freud, the last 100+ years, has really developed into a very fine art, and combining that with ancient tools from acupuncture, where it turns out that you can tap on certain points that send signals to the brain that have very precise effects. And by understanding those effects, you can do so much more than talk therapy. You can reach those goals. You can overcome those problems much more quickly because you're able to not only let it happen in this kind of organic healing relationship way, but also you're doing very precise interventions that support what you're doing with the talk, what you're doing in the healing relationship. So for me, I've been doing it about 15 years and into a 45-year career as a psychologist. So for 30 years, I wasn't doing it. And the difference is really profound. I think I was considered a relatively good practitioner before I got into energy psychology. I had waiting lists. stuff like that. But it's real. It makes things happen so much faster, and it's just it's just a silly little technique. I mean, it looks silly. It's easy to do. It's relatively easy for a therapist to learn it. It's not like they have to go back to school for another year. It's something they can pick up in a certification program that they can do while they're doing their regular work. And so it's really, and I think that it's it's fun to be able to get that kind of results.
Mm-hmm. I always tell everybody, as the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology states, talk therapy is not enough.
Right.
I can't imagine. I was introduced to energy psychology back in 1996, and I was a die-hard cognitive behavior therapist, didn't know anything about it, but this is like counseling on steroids. It just takes everybody to the next level, and it gets people unstuck. What I think is so fascinating, David, is your journey, because weren't you among the skeptics in the beginning of all this and wondered, what is this all about? How did you get interested in energy psychology? Well,
my wife, Donna Eden, is a pioneer in energy medicine. And we've been together for 40 years. So it took me about 20 years to really catch on to what she was up to, because it's so strange to talk about energy when what's energy? Energy, there's a dozen kinds of energy. There's nuclear energy, there's solar energy, there's, thermal energy, there's all kinds that physics can describe. And she's not talking about any of those. I mean, she's talking about all of those, but she's talking about also something very different. And that something very different is very hard to get your mind around, because it has intelligence, just like the heart has intelligence. The energies that run the heart have intelligence. It carries information. It has memory. Now, none of the energies in conventional physics have those qualities. They don't have consciousness. They don't have intelligence. They don't carry memory in the detailed way that the energies like the heart chakra carries memories of times that you have been loved and times that you have been hurt. Those memories are in there. We learned that it's all in the neurons, but it's at least if you really look at how people who see energy and work intimately with energy, how they are getting their information, it is as if the heart chakra, they're tuning into it. They're tuning into a wavelength so that they know what the client went through. They have a very good feel for it, a good idea, maybe not all the details, but certainly the theme. And there's no way that that neuron to neuron would explain that. So so very skeptically, I mean, as you said, I was at Johns Hopkins, and I did research there that was taking a hard look at all the new therapies. I was 25. My boss, I'm in the job 2 weeks, and I get a call from the secretary of the chairman of the department saying, Dr. Elkes wants to see you. I thought, oh my God, have I screwed it up this fast, this big? I mean, this is my boss's 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 boss. This is the chair of at the time, the highest rated psychiatry department in the country and in the world. And so I just waited until I went in there wondering what he was going to say. And he says, David, what are all these new therapies coming out of California? You're from California. Now, is this just more California fluff? Is this old wine in new skins? Or is there genuine innovation we need to know about here at Hopkins? Go find out. And so, at 25, I was very interested in self-improvement. I needed a lot of it. And these were all self-improvement techniques. So I took this assignment on with great vigor. I had to do all my other stuff, but in the evenings, I might call the innovator of there were 200 new therapies at the time, and I actually studied 46 of them in the subsequent year. And I call and say, we're doing a study here at Hopkins and we're really interested in your innovation, and they'd be very generous with their time, and they talk to me and they send me their papers, and often they invite me to their workshops, because in a lot of these new therapies, that was one of their main formats. It would be in the clinical office, but they also had a workshop format. And so I went to a lot of these workshops, and I learned a lot about what is California fluff, what is old wine and new skins, and what is genuine innovation. It was before internet, before email. It was the early 70s. And so I would take really copious notes of what the leader was saying. I was the only one in the room taking notes, but what the leader's saying, and what the exercises were, what the techniques were. But I also took notes on what the participants were saying. And then I'd get everybody's phone number at the end, and I'd call them 2 weeks later, and I'd say, wasn't that a great workshop? How's it impacted your life? Mm-hmm. And generally they wouldn't remember what they had said 2 weeks ago. It was gone. They were back in their life. They're back in their old patterns, all of that. Mm-hmm. And so, but some of them really were changed. And so, okay, what's the difference here? And so I realized that one of the differences is it can't just be a change in enthusiasm or superficial beliefs, that it has to go deeper, and it has to go into the body in some way for these changes to really hold on. And there's also a readiness. Some people change because they were ready to change. They just needed almost any kind of catalyst might have done it. And some people were just so satisfied with where their life was that they were going to the workshop just for the fun of it, and they weren't really open to change. But what the therapist did also made a difference. So I kind of was sorting that out. What is the difference in this? It looked like you were about to ask a question.
No, I was just thinking, this is fascinating because it's spoken like a true researcher. So you go to the workshop, and then you call people up 2 weeks later and say, what did you get out of this? How did your life change? You really followed up to see.
I did. And I'd remind them what they had said, and they go, oh yeah, I remember that. But it often didn't translate. And I'd also call them in 2 months and see. So I'm taking notes on all of this. And I don't know, I bet I probably went to 25 weekend workshops in that year. I mean, just every weekend I was going somewhere, every other weekend. And
meanwhile, you're still on faculty with Johns Hopkins, and they're sending you to all these workshops to learn about. Wow, what a gift!
Yeah, it was great. A lot of them, the innovator just invited me to their workshops, so I got to come for free. But Hopkins still paid for the travel, and it was great. But it resulted in me recognizing that there is a lawful sequence of inner events by which people evolve. And I broke it into 5 stages that were really could systematically be spoken of. And basically those 5 stages are the way that people's take on reality, who knows what truth is, but what the reality as you construct it, that evolves over your life. And there are principles by which it evolves. And all of these systems would come in. I understood it now as a 5-stage process that circles. It goes again all throughout your life. You're going through these 5 stages, and maybe you're in stage 2 in your career, but you're in stage 4 in your family life, or your definition of yourself as a parent. And and I'd started looking for something in the psychology literature, because I was, a PhD in psychology, so I knew that literature pretty well, that really had a term that really captured this, and there really wasn't one. I mean, there's psyche, there's cognitive structures, but this construction of reality that has a lot of feeling, it's tied in with motivation, it's really a core, and I just couldn't find a term, and then I came up with the idea that just as societies have a cultural mythology that really shapes how people understand themselves and understand their world and understand the place of the society. And Joseph Campbell said, who I was studying back then, said that early cultures, when they could name a myth, when they could name it, that myth was already dead. Because the myths, you live in the myths, you live in them. It's like the fish is the last to discover water. You don't think of it as a mythology. You think of it as reality. But I made the leap from cultural myths to personal myths, that we each live out a personal mythology. And this mythology is shaping what we do, shaping how we think of ourselves, how we see our opportunities in the world, how we see our purpose in the world. All of that is this deep inner template that may be more or less conscious, like the fish coming out of water. Well, one of the things psychotherapy did was it gave us tools for the fish to come out of water and reflect on itself in the water. So we're able to look at our unconscious processes. And that was Freud and Jung's great contributions, were that concept that you don't have to just play it out. You can actually participate in it. You can actually change that what's down there by it. You can heal the traumas that led to the really dysfunctional parts of that template. And so I called it personal mythology. And really, that was my trademark, my professional trademark, until Donna co-opted me 30 years later. But what I realized, those 46 systems that I studied, each came in at a different stage of that 5-stage process. Some of them were much better, like the Freudian type psychodynamic approaches, thought transactional analysis, those kinds of approaches were really good at looking at the early stages of how the old reality is in conflict with something new wanting to emerge. And the more Jungian approaches, the more spiritual approaches were really good at finding a larger vision, a larger story. And then some of the approaches were, like Gestalt chair work is really good at working with the conflict between the two. And that's the third stage. And then the fourth stage is really embracing it. And the fifth stage is translating this new vision into your life. And then the behavioral approaches, cognitive behavioral therapy, that's where they really shine. They're not as good in the earlier psychodynamic stages. So I think that was really a major part of my life. Okay, so fast forward to energy psychology, which is what you asked about.
Well, no, the history is phenomenal. There will be many, many researchers of our listeners and viewers. Many people will be interested in the intricacies of how all this came to be, the history of it with you.
Yeah, and the book you mentioned, that was the U.S. Book News 27 Best Psychology Mental Health book, was Personal Mythology, and it's still I'm teaching a class in it in about a month in Switzerland. I just taught one in Esalen. It's still very alive. It's kind of on the back seat of my professional life, but it's still very relevant, I think, particularly now when the culture's mythology is gotten so strange. Hold on, let me just try to turn this off somehow. I don't know how it's going to talk in a minute. I should have taken it out of the room. I'm very sorry.
No problem.
Okay, so then I have my career. I go 30 years with teaching probably 200 personal mythology workshops, but also my private practice was very very Jungian oriented, very mythical, personal myth oriented. I'd make my clients read the book and go through the program outside of the therapy because it really accelerated what happened in the therapy. And then Donna is getting a lot of invitations to write a book, and she's really not sure she wants to write a book because it's so amorphous. How do you really put that in a book? What she does, it's just got so multidimensional and all that and intuitive. And she asked if I'd help, and so for 2 years I interviewed her. We were given advances on the book, so we cut our practices down to half time. And for 2 years, every day, I'd be asking her, how do you experience a chakra? What's it like? How's the heart chakra different from the solar plexus chakra? Is it a different energy? Is it have different functions? And she'd have these really good answers. And because when we started, I thought it was going to be Donna's favorite stories. I thought it was going to be a memoir, because really, what can you say? But it turned out she has a very systematic understanding of what she's doing. And 20 years, I never got that until we really focused on it. And I couldn't, because it was like the Hopkins project was good training for me because I was interviewing all these leaders, these, world-class leaders in their areas and trying to, kind of break the shells and see what's fluff and what's real. And so I was a tough interviewer with Donna. And what I found was that she had really good answers, and her work is very empirical in the sense. Empirical means based on observation and experimentation. And she could see the energy, so that's a kind of empirical observation that I didn't have available.
Yes.
But if you accept that, and there's enough people that see energy that kind of corroborate one another, they see the same thing, that then to look at somebody on their table and say, okay, there's a block here and a block here. Well, okay, let's see, what can I do? So I'll put my hand over the meridian. I'll move my hand over the meridian and we'll see if that helps. And then, no, that didn't help. So how about if I work on the chakra? So she'll spin the chakra. That didn't help either. Well, maybe it's the meridian that feeds it is blocked. So I'll work with that. That still didn't help. Well, let's see. Maybe the triple warmer, which holds habits in place, maybe that's what's keeping it from correcting. So I'll calm triple warmer, and now the first thing I did works. And so that's the experimentation part. So that really was impressive to me as we had so many hours of talking not only about concepts, but also about what she did with individual clients. We figured that at that time she had seen 10,000 people for 90 minutes over a 23-year period. So it was a lot of background there. So back to your question, of how where did energy cycle? So the book comes out, we go on the road, we go on, the publisher puts us on a 6-city tour, and then we come back and we've got 50 invitations to come to somebody's PTA or to come give a talk at somebody's college or somebody's church, or they want to organize a workshop for us, or whatever it is. We got 50 of them in my little of things. And what are we going to do with that? It's calling, gosh. So we took 6 months off. We both went on sabbatical for 6 months and just started trying to fulfill these. And what we didn't think of, we felt like, okay, that's our duty, is to respond to this calling. But we didn't think of is, oh my gosh, we come back with hundreds of invitations. So I said, okay, I guess I have to just give up my career and I'll go off with Donna. It's a larger calling, and I'll carry the bags and crack the jokes, and that's what I can do to support her. And sometimes I give a conceptual overview of what she just did. And off we go, and we're on the workshop circuit. Never really having any ambition to do this, but it just kind of pulled us in. And then people are, about 15% of the people that come to Donna's trainings are therapists. So they were asking me about energy psychology. I didn't know. Energy, I don't know what that is. But so you have a choice of faking it or learning something. And so I was kind of in that middle place when we were at some city. I don't remember what city. I wish I did. But one of the women in the class was a psychologist, and it was a weekend workshop, so it ended on Sunday noon, and we were staying over, and she said, my psychology group, our local group of psychologists in this town, meets once a month on Sunday nights, and I wonder if you'd like to come as my guest. They're doing a demonstration on these tapping therapies. And I thought, okay, well, I need a chance to find out what we're talking about, what everybody's asking me about. And I go, and the way that it was set up was that one of the therapists, just a group of about a dozen psychologists meeting in someone's living room, and one of the therapists had learned thought field therapy, the original form of energy psychology. But that's what you learned in 1996, right? It was
portions of it. My supervisor at that time, a psychologist, he actually studied under Roger Callahan, and then he came back, and then of course Roger had this contract where you're not allowed to teach how to do this, but you can teach certain algorithms. So that's how I was first introduced to it, just with a few algorithms before EF. That was the beginning, and then EFT and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right there on the ground floor. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I talk to folks and they say, well, how long have you been studying this? I've been tapping since 2005. I said, well, that's very nice. I've been tapping since 1996. Ooh. Yeah, it's been 22 years, and I think I'm starting to get the hang of it.
Yeah.
Your work and Donna's work, what happens is, as you're describing, over working with many, many clients, then I start to intuitively think, well, maybe it's this, and maybe it's that, and let's try this, and let's try that. Or someone will come in and say, oh, I said, and then immediately I think, triple warmer, okay, let's calm it right now, you're a mess, let's calm that amygdala, let's calm the triple warmer, and this is how you do it. So take a video of me doing this so you can practice this at home. It's just remarkable that people go, oh, I said, yes, you don't need drugs, you don't need alcohol. And then if you practice this every day and everything else that I'm teaching you, you may, I'm not saying you will, I'm saying you may be able to work with your doctor to wean off of some of this psychotropic medication that you're taking. But you have to practice this and be open to a new paradigm. What I say is, I'm flying the plane and I'm inviting you to be a passenger. You don't have to know how to fly the plane. You just have to trust me that I can get you there safely.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yes. So it is. And so anyway, so back to your question of half an hour ago about how I, as a skeptic, so that was the context. And I'm at this meeting, and one of the therapists that had been studying thought field therapy invited the group to produce a patient that one of the other therapists was having difficulty with. And so the program for the evening was the patient was there, and this thought field therapy therapist is going to work with her. So that was the setup. And so we're in a circle, and the therapist and the client are in the middle, and the therapist starts to interview her, and I'm very comfortable with the questions he's asking. He's asking about the history, the things she's done to try to help it, and her problem is she has severe claustrophobia, really severe. She can't ride an elevator, she cannot go under bridges. It really gets in the way of her life. And she's tried several therapies, and this one, again, isn't working. And then the therapist asks her to imagine being in an enclosed space and to give it a rating of 0 to 10. And I'm comfortable with that because I used to do systematic desensitization, which is actually a very good, powerful method, but it's slow compared to tapping, but it works for many things. And then the next thing that happens, though, is not within my comfort zone. He's having her rub these points and make a statement that doesn't make any sense to me. You know, even though I have this fear of closed spaces, I deeply love and accept myself. Now, why in the world would he affirm that she has this fear of closed spaces? That was off the charts. That's wrong. You don't do that. You don't do affirmations that way. And I deeply love and accept myself. That's trite. You know, what's he doing here? And then to make it worse, he starts doing her tap on these points and saying, my fear, I think it was elevators, my fear of being in an elevator, my fear of being in an elevator, my fear of being, and, you know, what is that going, how is that therapy? How's that going to help somebody by tapping on this and just repeating the problem? She knows what the problem is. That's not what she needs help with. And, you know, and originally she was at a 10, and then she does this round and it goes down to an 8, and I'm watching and say, okay, well, these things, you know, fluctuate, and she's maybe a little calmer now. And then she does another round and it goes down again. And I'm thinking, okay, here's what's happening, is that she doesn't want to embarrass the therapist in front of his colleagues. And so that's the only explanation.
How the mind looks for answers on something they don't understand. You don't understand. David, stop right there for a moment, because I'm going to do a little teaser here. I'm going to say, all right, everyone, this is part 1 of my interview with Dr. David Feinstein. Stay tuned for part 2.